Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Mondays with Micah. I am continuing the series called Being a Watchman, and I have with me here Captain Tommy Potter. Now, he was not Captain Tommy Potter to me.
No.
Just so you know, we go way back, folks. We go back to when I was, how old? Seven?
Yeah.
7 years old.
First, second grade, something like that.
I thought it was first grade. Mother said it was second.
I think it was second.
Okay, she said second, so the adults are saying that it was second, so we will believe them. And it is very funny because that's how far back we go. So he basically I will be 45, Tommy.
You're getting old. I'm getting younger, you're getting older.
So I'm just trying to give some perspective here.
Wow, you just threw it into real perspective, Micah. Thank you. Thank you.
So that little girl is midlife. Okay,
midlife.
I'm in a midlife. I'm not in a midlife crisis, but I'm midlifing absolutely right now.
I like that, midlifing.
I'm midlifing for real, for real. And Tommy has witnessed Micah's evolution, and this is not about me, but there isn't that many that I'm going to be interviewing this summer that has this history with me, as for teaching me how to, I guess, read and write. I don't know.
I'm not sure what we were doing back then. Reading and writing, I'm not sure.
What were
you and two others, so it was a total of three.
There were three of us
back in the day when I thought I wanted to be a school teacher.
Okay.
You broke me. After that class, I said, never again. Never again.
What a shock to hear that. Lovely compliments. And so he and my mom were the second grade teacher. I think you took 2 days and she took 3 days.
2 days is all I could stand.
Yes, yeah. Okay. And there, he was in his 20s.
Yes, early 20s. Very early 20s. Okay,
so
since it's been that many years ago, because I'm not that old now.
That's right. So early 20s, he was teaching me second grade. I thought him and my mother were the same age because I guess as a young little kid, think they are because they're both doing it. And it was many years later I found out they were 20 years apart.
So either I was very old acting or she was very young. I'm going with she was very young.
Yeah, she's a young at heart lady.
Yeah.
But I was way off. And so to this day, I really don't like to guess people's ages because I'm probably wrong. And I also don't like to guess if people are pregnant or not. I also don't like to do that.
Okay, I got you.
Okay, so this was our icebreaker here today. But I'm just giving some history for you, the viewers, that Tommy was part of my youth group years. If you call youth group leader, we call them mentors today. And I don't know how many years. See, Holly can tell us exact years. I don't know. Were you with Trey?
Yeah, so it was like me and Trey, Frank. Yeah, so it's way back.
And was that like 3 years or 2?
Oh no, I probably worked with the youth for about 4 years. I think 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so those so Frank and Tommy are still doing things in the church.
I am, but I'm seeing a theme here that I dealt with you as a kid, I dealt with you as a teenager, and then based on those interactions, I felt like I had to get a job where I carried a gun. So again, Micah, I don't know if you're the root of all this or what.
I mean, this may be a therapy session for one of us or both of us here today.
I'm going to say both.
Yes, I'm thinking it's both because he may be, as you can tell, folks, he's going to keep me on my toes and I'm going to challenge everyone that he has.
Okay.
So buckle up, folks.
Here we
go. Buckle up.
Here we go.
We have a man that has done a few different things throughout his life. And I feel like once you put that badge on, that's really when like your adult job, like something hit right.
Yeah, it was, so for my early 20s, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Did I want to teach? Did I want to go into ministry? I really wasn't sure. And I was pursuing maybe going into the fire service and being a firefighter and a paramedic. And then I had this revelation one day that when a house is on fire, I really don't want to go into a burning house, right? I want to go the opposite direction. Right. And so I Actually, I had a conversation with the fire chief back then, and he very sternly and very firmly looked at me and said, Tommy, they call it a fire department for a reason.
Mm.
And I said, you know what, Chief, I don't think this is for me.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody said, hey, have you ever thought about the police department? And I said, well, if I don't want to deal with fire, I know I don't want to dodge bullets.
Right.
But somebody said, hey, do a ride along with me. And so I went and I rode with a Franklin police officer.
Mm-hmm.
And from that day forward, that's all I've ever wanted to do. And so here we are, almost 27 years
Wow.
later. And I'm still wearing a badge every day and enjoying this chosen profession of mine. And you are right. So it's somewhere in there, a light bulb came on for me.
And, you know, this is something here that I feel like is going to uncover, and I may be a little more asking more poignant questions with you that I
Okay.
may not have the history with others to
All right.
feel the confidence to ask.
Okay.
But I remember you preached on the GPS. Was that
Yes,
right?
I did. God's positioning system, right? Sometimes we think we know where we want to go, and we have to be sensitive to the Spirit to say, you know, when something inside of us tells us to go a different direction, do we trust that and go? Is that the best way for us to go?
And so, why do I bring that up? Because even though he may not have the title of pastor, there is the mission work that we do as believers in every vocation that we have.
That's true.
That we are walking with people in the public service industry, especially, and in his regard, you're kind of walking into sometimes some tougher situations.
Yes.
On a more regular basis.
A regular basis.
And so for me, I'd like to not think those things are really happening in my community or beyond. So I'd rather live in the kind of bubble of peace and tranquility.
But you know, that's some things that first responders, whether it's, you know, law enforcement or our fire and EMS people, I mean, that's, I think, this profession that we have is not just a job.
Yeah.
I look at it as a calling.
Absolutely.
And so a lot of times that's the situations that we find ourselves. And I know we're going to talk a little bit later about what being a watchman means, right? I think that's the situation that we find ourselves in, is standing in the gap in so many situations in our community that maybe you, your neighbors, the person down the street, the person in the shop next door, they're not aware is going on. But we as first responders oftentimes find ourselves thrust into the situation that maybe a lot of people don't know what's happening.
And don't need to know that's happening. And that's, you know, part of it. But also, I have just felt as the more I'm doing these interviews, really to bring awareness to, yes, he has taken an oath here. But us, the neighbors, the members of society, can pray and stand in the gap for them. Not just those who are wives of police. Yes, I truly believe that. I truly believe that our prayers matter and that prayers protect, okay? And that we can call on those angels. And I truly believe that there's more supernatural things going on than meets the eye. And I think first responders get to see some of these miracles, if you want to call it, these moments that are like, you know, a little more angelic, if you want to say. When I've heard stories of people coming up on car accidents and the person that came first to help them, that they never could see it, they never saw him again. No one, they came and helped. And so I have to believe that even though you may be seeing some gorier parts, that your faith in God and what you've seen on top of that has grown your faith.
Oh, I think so. I mean, I think my relationship with Christ, I think my, you know, the faith that we stand on. I mean, I think in a lot of situations that I've been a part of, the vast majority of my career has been spent as an investigator. I'm more in the administration side now, but I think based on all those things, I think that the one word that just kind of rings for me is that there's hope, right? And in the midst of these situations, they could be tragic, they could be devastating to families. They could be life-changing to families. In the midst of all of that, there's still hope.
Right.
And that's the word that I think rings true for me.
And that to me is what's special about all of it, is to think that there's not just people that have trained skills to walk into situations and have protocol, that there's also the ones in with faith that have a sidekick we'd call the Holy Spirit,
Yeah.
that is navigating some of those situations where you may have gone in thinking one thing and you changed not your protocol, but maybe the way you communicated to those people.
So I think in law enforcement, and I can speak about this because this is what I do, right? So there are protocols, there are policies, there are procedures that say, these are the foundations and how you need to do those things. But we're not robots, right? And we don't want to take that robot mentality. And so I think, especially for people of faith, right, and people of faith who work in this profession, that the Holy Spirit shows us or leads us to when, you want to take those policies and procedures, but at the same time, you want to shore them up with empathy and understanding and compassion and resilience and instilling hope in people. So I think we have to, as a profession, right? We have to follow our policies and procedures. But as a human and as a Christian, we couple those other things with it, so that whatever that situation the person is dealing with, that we can't make it right.
Right.
Because when someone's dealing with a tragedy, someone's dealing with grief, we can't change that.
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
But what we can do is to help that person work their way through that,
That's
or to
right.
be there to walk alongside of them when they're going through that. For me as an investigator, it may be that time may be 30 minutes, maybe an hour. My investigations may have been weeks and months, right? But it's just being there for the individual.
Right. And this is the reality, that how do you walk into these rooms and walk out? Are you able to let them go? Does it take, what is your decompressing like?
So for me, obviously faith is important, right? Family is important. I think as cops, as police officers, we build up relationships with others that carry a badge, that wear a badge, carry a gun, so to speak, right? So I think we draw on all of that. I know for the agency that I work for, we have I know you're going to meet him later. We have an outstanding chaplain that interacts with our officers. We have a peer support group that we encourage our deputies to reach out to in times of stress, or in situations, to allow them, without judgment or without anything else, to decompress. So I think there's a lot of different things, but also know that at the end of the day, that even after being exposed to a lot of tragedies, if you allow that to if you constantly dwell on those things and you allow that to consume you, it will do just that.
Right.
It will eat you up. It will, for lack of better phrase or term or whatever, I mean, it will consume you with darkness.
Yes.
But the best way to combat the darkness, again, I go back to hope. And hope brings light.
Absolutely.
And light chases away the darkness.
That's right.
And so to me, even like today, it was just very stressful. And you learn to grab a hold of the small things, right? Because, adversity and hope, they can coexist.
That's good.
So I don't have to say, as a first responder, I can never have adversity, or I can never have experience grief, or I can never experience sorrow, because you're going to see that, whether it's dealing with someone who has tragically died in a car crash, or having to go tell a loved one their family member has been murdered, or their family member has committed suicide, or their child is dead. All of those things I've had to do in my career. But that tragedy and that hope can coexist.
Yeah. And I know he saw that when Ben passed, because one of a marking moment for me was that as we were leading up to his service, something I wasn't expecting to see was, Captain Tommy. And, I may not be holding the emotions that he feels deeply about it. It's getting closer to those days. But I was a wreck the day that we drove up to the graveside and he was saluting all of us. And so that is moving, very moving, because that little girl at 7 years old, and also the son that he knew, not his son, but like a son, brother, all the words you would use, very more similar in age and brother. And then these are tragedies that you weren't having to investigate, right, and still deeply affecting us at all. And the things that happened in those days leading up, for me personally, were the most heightened spiritual state I've ever gotten to be a part of, and as a church body. And so I'm still hungry for that today. The taste of the experience of those 17 days will carry me the rest of my life. I'm proud of those days.
Yeah.
And I do not apologize or have any regrets on any choices that we made. And because there's something about when he was talking about that GPS, like we went off the route, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we went off route. And when the community rallies, and I haven't really asked you this, were you challenged? I was left in a buffer, kind of, and I'm thankful for that. But there were those that I'm going to have on this show who were personally affected and challenged personally in their walks with the Lord through it, but also that challenged their relationship and grew. It was a turning point in their relationship with the Lord those days. But I have to ask you, I mean, and I know this happened, that we had to kind of stand up for our faith in the challenges that were asked.
So we did. And it's funny, first, I didn't know this interview was going to make a grown man shed a tear here for a minute. I will say, let me go back and say, Micah, that afternoon that I stood in that cemetery, while that was not the place I ever wanted to be, I would never not be there.
Absolutely.
Ben was a friend, a brother,
yep,
like a son. So anyway, yeah, left for that. But yes, during that time frame, during that walk of because here, for a police officer, we're very good, right, at compartmentalizing or building up walls to protect our emotions and dealing with other people, right? Yep. Strangers, like I said, different situations we're put into. But personally, sometimes building up those walls are hindrances because we try to build up the walls in our personal lives that protect us in our professional lives, right?
It overlaps.
So it overlaps a lot of times, right? And so during those 17 days, right, when we're dealing with, a flood of emotions, I can speak for myself, a flood of emotions, a shifting in what do you really believe as a church?
That's it.
What do you really believe?
That's it.
How can I tell you God is faithful to do X, Y, and Z if I can't trust God to do this in this situation that I'm currently walking through? Right. And that's the situation that we found ourselves walking through.
Absolutely.
Right? Not walking alone, but walking as a body of believers.
That's it.
And yeah, there were a lot of raised eyebrows. There were a lot of questions. There were... So I'll back up to September.
This is good.
I'll back up to September 1983. Were you even born in 1983?
Yes, I was 2 years old.
Okay, 2 years old. September 13th, 1983 was the first day I ever visited Rock Church in Franklin.
Okay.
Okay. I was 13 years old.
Okay.
We had just moved to Franklin. My mother had heard about the church.
Hmm.
She took us to church. My grandmother came with us. She was visiting from Florida. I sat third row back. I can tell you exactly where I was sitting in the downstairs barn, right? I remember thinking, what has she gotten me into now? Okay. Now, fast forward to Ben's death, walking through those 17 days, I thought, what have I gotten myself into now? Okay. But what I've gotten myself into is trusting and believing that God is a God of miracles. God can meet us where we're at. God is a God of provision. God is a God of substance. God is a God of joy. God is a God of hope, right? So now we walk through that with the raised eyebrows and everything else. 30 days ago, I had a conversation with a man, and we talked about that. And he said, he said, when your church was going through everything you went with Ben's death, I thought you had lost your mind. Raising somebody, believing that God is going to raise them, believing God is going to bring them back to life. I thought you had lost your mind. That what kind of place was this? He said, now, after all those years and going through the things I've gone through in his life, talking about his life, and he said where he stands in his relationship with Christ today, he said, I finally realized, man, y'all were so on target. Because how can, again, it goes back to, how can we say, oh, you're dealing with something, I'll pray for you. But no, you guys walked it out.
Action.
You took action, and that's the word, action. And so he's like, now I look at it now that maybe you and your fellow believers weren't that far off during that time frame. That it's true that he told me, he said that was truly walking out your faith.
Walking on the water, folks. Peter walking on the water. It was one of those, but what is so easy for me to say about it is that we won't go here fully, but in things of political nature, you have to campaign. There was no campaign in that regard for all that happened. Now, there were some opposing sides, and I was fine with the naysayers, but I was very frank and said, if someone is to come here and represent, we need all faith on deck. We need all faith on deck. If you're a doubting person, we don't need you to come and visit here. There were some very clear things that I thought, and that may be contrary to the beginning days of a widow's grief journey. All that to say, we don't have to belabor the experience, but for those that were involved in it, it was a tangible experience.
It was.
I say those 17 days candy coated our hearts. I can now say that it gave us our breath back. We needed that time to be able to breathe because the grief was so intense. And yet the joy that supernaturally came for me was contagious, I truly believe, and I still contend for that. So joy is part of my weaponry here on this earth, and worship is my weapon. And one of my the spirit of joy is one of the spirits that I can release in the earth and have continued to, and it has shocked many that the shoe did not drop onto the other foot, because there was question that this high that Micah is on has to drop at some point. And I'm not saying that it didn't in my energy, but in my perspective on it all, it has never dropped. And so, and maybe you've heard me say this, but when I've gotten to speak places and these questions come up, and I really felt like I need to have not an answer, but some resolve. And the thought that came, and I still say it today, and I'm like, thank you, Lord, is that God did not stop loving me when he rewarded my husband with heaven.
Yes. But see here, but Micah, we think, and I've given this some thought this past week, right? we think in our natural mind
Mm-hmm.
that death
It's the
is
end.
the end.
It's the end.
But when we look at it with our spiritual mind, death is not
No.
the end.
No.
Death is just the very, it's the
Beginning.
beginning.
It's
It
the,
is the
yeah.
beginning, right? And so I think that is, and that's one of the things that, from my perspective as a man of faith, wearing this uniform and
Mm-hmm.
dealing with individuals, is having that conversation when
Mm-hmm.
appropriate with
Yep,
individuals,
that's
right?
right.
Is that this is not the end.
Right.
It is just the beginning.
Mm-hmm. And so, and these are terms newer, and some of this may, but I haven't gotten to say it to him. So those who are watching consistently, you're like, she's saying the same things. Well, yes, I hope I am saying the same things. But walking through Poppy, very different experience.
Don't make me cry again.
We're not.
Okay.
But something happened differently for me in language. And what I mean by that, one of the people that started my thinking on this was really Peggy. She's over me now, but at the time she was Peggy Cannon, and her taking care of her husband until those final days. What it showed me is a woman who really was protecting her husband's
Mm-hmm.
dignity.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of a new language for me to see that even though she was pretty worn down by the end of the journey, that she not always opening it up for everyone to
Right.
come over and do. And why don't you have more help and all those things, that she had sacred time with him and she honored his dignity.
Yeah.
And I respected that decision and saw the beauty in it more. But also going through Poppy, there's something when there is these kind of quicker declines, let's say, or there's kind of a turning point and then decline from that point on. It's sacred.
It is sacred.
It's a
And
sacred
so
window.
we'll compare, you know, again, let's look at Ben's death, right, Micah? So many
Mm.
people after Ben's death said, and things that you were dealing with and how you were handling yourself, people said, look how strong Micah is. Look how strong Micah is, right? And I think you were, right? There's no doubt about that. You were. We've had conversations about that. Cindy and I have had conversations about that. Um, but then when I look at Poppy's death, I go, look how strong Obama was, because what you just said is encapsulated
Mm-hmm.
everything that she was doing
Mm-hmm.
during those final days,
Mm-hmm.
protecting his dignity,
Mm-hmm.
taking care of him.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, that's that's the Proverbs woman.
Yep.
That's it's what is needed in the
That's
situation,
right.
and readjusting lifestyles
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
be able to
Support.
support.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's it.
And so it is a, like I said, a sacred. I don't even just want to say it's special, because special to me seems a little lower in language understanding than something sacred. And it's not something to fear. And so that's what I'm coming into this, is that, man, these moments that wrecked us, okay, let me just make that clear. We emotionally were the most raw, most broken feeling people during these big losses. And Derek was another one for me that, again, why am I referencing all this? Because none of the other people I'm going to talk to,
Oh,
did I walk with them, with it, through it, in the
no.
midst of the position he's carrying, the position he has to answer for us about in this community. He has stood there. He has been a safeguard for us folks. When he's there at the gravesite, we know it's going to be okay. He's not going to let anything bad happen to us. He's on our security team. Why did that happen? Because things in the country started happening and conversations started to happen and they changed bylaws and things happened. Why? So we can be protected as a people around here. Why does that matter to me? Because that isn't my role. It's not my
Yeah,
role.
but you know what, Micah? You say that now, and because we have a relationship, right?
Mm,
And I get that.
mm-hmm,
But I'm no different
mm,
than any other person whether it's a Franklin police officer, whether it's a Southampton County Sheriff's deputy,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's a Virginia State Trooper, whether it's an Isle of Wight County Sheriff's deputy, they fulfill that
That's
same
right.
roles for the people they're closest with,
That's
for
right.
their church, their community, their sports organization, right? Because that's the oath that we've
That's
taken
right.
to first protect, second to serve. And so we can talk about our relationship and doing those things because those are the things that we know about.
Yes.
And I don't want to single it out that, I'm so much more special or whatever than
Right.
anybody else. No, I'm not, right? But because we're all in this profession and we're all called to serve, and we serve our communities at the level that we're at and the position that we're in at the time.
That's right. And it elevated the experience is all I'm saying. We didn't have to think about certain things because there were people in place to do it. And then beyond, as I'm saying.
But sometimes for law enforcement,
okay,
that's a downfall. Because cops are wired to solve the problem. There's an emergency, there's gunshots, we're running towards the emergency, we're running towards the bullets because why? We want to solve the problem. But sometimes with people dealing with tragedy and dealing with grief, we get there and we run to the grief, or we run to the situation, and all of a sudden we are hit with the reality, I can't fix this.
Right.
And so that's where
you kind of let up. You have to let
we
up.
have to worry about ourselves, our emotional well-being, our spiritual well-being, because we're hit with the reality that I can't fix.
Bring them back.
I can't fix your grief.
Yep.
I can't fix so-and-so's sorrow. I can't fix the devastation that somebody's dealing with. But where we have to switch gears is, if I can't fix it, what can I do in the moment?
Yeah.
So is it a patrol deputy at 2:00 in the morning that's come upon a tragic car crash and someone has lost their life? What can I do in the moment? Is it an experienced investigator that is investigating a homicide where someone has experienced the tragic loss of a loved one? What can I do in the moments of that investigation that can bring hope, can bring comfort, can bring closure to that family?
And I'm going to go back to this again.
Sometimes things can't be fixed.
They can't be fixed, but I want you to hear this on this show here today. Those moments are sacred too. Because there is things in the balance, and there's opportunities where things go really wrong.
There are.
And it is hard for the ones left to reconcile the truth.
It's very hard. And it's also hard for those that wear the badge sometimes to reconcile the truth. This is ironic. We're talking today. I don't think we planned this when we were looking at the schedule. I know we didn't.
No.
But today, this is National Police Memorial Week, where we take. That's why my badge is shrouded today, right? We take this week to honor and to recognize those in law enforcement who've paid the ultimate sacrifice, and we think about those that have paid the ultimate sacrifice, that have been killed in the line of duty, and that's what we want to honor. We want to respect them. But today more law enforcement officers are dying at their own hands.
Wow.
As a result of suicide than are actually killed in the line of duty.
I did not know
somebody else's hand.
Wow.
Because they're running to that tragedy. They're dealing with what society doesn't want to deal with, right? And too many people in my profession don't possess the tools or the relationship or, most importantly, the faith to see them out of that darkness, so the darkness doesn't consume them.
I mean, look, this is information. Again, the timing, it makes me happy because then it feels like it is the Lord. It's not just the relationship here. It's bigger than that. There's more at stake here. But trying to bring that up, and that's what I'm just thinking, I'm like, we become so callous to these stories, and then we lose respect for the people in the badge.
Oh, most definitely.
We don't have any respect for what they do.
This is the only profession, or not necessarily the only, but I mean, this profession has to make split-second life and death decisions that has the potential to carry consequences for years and years and years to come.
on both sides,
both
for
sides,
yourself
both
and the
sides,
others.
both sides.
And, all of us can be great critics when we watch those, these shorts back of things that get captured. And yes, in all professions, there are those who abuse the badge, okay? But we can't just you can't throw the baby with the
Bathwater. That's right.
bathwater, thank you, I can never get them right,
That's right.
on everything. And it is, back, you said earlier, something that happened. It's like, it's the both and, y'all. I thought we were either or people, the black and white type of thing. And walking through the tragedy with Ben, I started to change myself, my perspective on things, my understanding of things, my realization I didn't know anything about a lot of things. And I thought I did know a thing or two about a thing or two. So yeah, I was breaking them down in second grade about this little mouthy girl. Who knows what she was doing in second grade? I don't know. But she was funny then too, though. She was funny then too.
She was funny then too. Yes, she was.
Thank you.
She was
She
funny
was
then
funny
too.
then too. Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
yes,
I
yes,
appreciate that.
yes.
But
You weren't so stylish in your little school
no.
uniforms. You've come a long way today, okay? With your little plaid school
Oh my
uniform with your blue
goodness.
collar little
That's right.
blouse,
Of
right?
course, I look depressed
Yes,
every
yes.
day.
But
But
you've come a long way.
this is it, folks. I mean, this both and the tension of walking into resistance and carrying hope at the same time. It is this beacon, but it's like you've got a shield and a light at the same time. And so, why are we doing this? So, I know you've kind of been sharing a little bit about these tools, and I'm so glad that you brought up this week of awareness of honoring those who did lose their life. And now to hear, I mean, back to the point of, folks, we've got to be praying for our community, back to being a watchman. Can we go there now? And how, for you, what is your relationship with grief? We've kind of talked about that. But what does being a watchman, before even taking this oath, I really think that you were one of those guys. I mean, you were looking out for us very early on.
Well, I just think a lot of times it's what God has called you to do, right? I think God gives you stirrings in your spirit at a young age, and it sets you on a path that you're starting to walk, right? And so, I mean, I think that's, and I don't know that I can explain it, right? I think, even through my early years, it was like, do I want to teach? Do I want to do this? How about that? How about that? Right? And none of those things panned out. I think God placed me on the path that He wanted me to be. Whether it was standing in the gap for the young teenagers when I worked with the youth group, to whether it was doing whatever I chose to do, right? I mean, I think that's just, whether it was volunteering with fire and rescue, I think that's just,
it was all training.
That becomes your spiritual DNA,
yes.
Right? I mean, so I think one day when we get to heaven and we're able to ask, God questions, maybe that's one of the questions I ask is, why did you place me on that path?
Right.
That'll be one of my many questions that I want to ask, right? But I just think it goes back to, for this profession, me and countless others that wear a badge, first and foremost is to protect. That's the easy part, because there are local laws, state laws, federal laws, policies and procedures, all those things that tell us how we're to protect. But it's to protect and to serve. And I think the serve part is where we have to start walking it out. And so, to me, serving means being that watchman, standing in the gap. Whether and oftentimes we find ourselves standing in the gap when people are in their very worst situation.
You're right.
Whether they're dealing with tragedy, a devastating situation, a life-altering situation where maybe a family member has been arrested, and they're dealing with us on a professional level. But it means standing in the gap for the community in whatever situation we find ourselves in.
And, I'd love to say that we're kind of a Mayberry here, and that there is no investigations and homicides and suicides. And now we're dealing with soliciting things online, and, child abuse, and, all the words we could use that bring harm, bring trauma. um, and that affect people. And so it is taking all pieces, and so some have said, well, the church needs to be like the hospital too, where you've got people who handle the ER, which are the in crisis folks. Then you've got people in skilled care. They're a little bit, better off. And the church has evolved since he was downstairs in those little chairs.
It was.
But there are parts, many things have changed and many things have not changed. But one thing I can say is that he has seen my mother be a worshiper and a facilitator in our community, an eyewitness, if you want to say, seen a family stand in many different challenging times and seasons, seen the Dillon family stand in many different scenarios. I'm sure he knows about more than me, due to his longevity there. And next year will be 30 years.
Yeah.
For me. And so we're kind, I don't want to say we're fully lifers, okay, but we do have longevity. And there's something to be said about that, because there's not a lot of that around these days.
No, it's called relationships.
Okay.
It's called relationships.
That's good.
Right? I mean, 30 years in the church.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost 45.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a few more. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. But it's called relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And in the relationships, and that's one of the things that goes back to being a watchman, right? Standing in the gap.
Yep.
is relying on relationships, right? So relationships is the good, it's the bad, it's the ugly, if you want to call that, right? It's the ups, it's the downs, it's the triumphs, it's the tragedies, the sorrows, the griefs, the celebrations. It's all of those things make up a relationship, right? And to me, as far as my relationship with Rock or the church, is just because there's one disagreement or there's one family argument, so to speak, because it happens in every family, and don't tell me it doesn't happen in your family, right? Sometimes I tell my family, I'm not really liking you today. I love you, but I don't like you today, right? So even in the relationship, sometimes it's like, I love you, but I don't really like you today. You don't give up relationships because of one instance or one shortcoming. We all fall short at times, right? So to me, that's again part of standing in the gap for our church family, and my faith is grounded on the relationship I have with Christ, the relationship I build with my pastors, the relationship that I build with those that sit to my left or to my right in the seats at church every day. It's those relationships. And I think too, when people or communities are faced with tragedy, like we were with Ben, or death of Poppy, it's because we have relationships with those around us that it gives us somebody to hang on to ride out the storm. Because there's going to be storms.
Absolutely.
There's going to be storms. There's going to be hard times. There's going to be darkness. I mean, that's human nature. That's the world that God has placed us in. But there's going to be light. There's going to be hope. There's going to be rejoicing. We've just got to stand in the gap during that dark time.
And
I also want to say too that
please.
I don't think that when you look at, I'll even go to say when you look at your pastors, when you look at your lay leaders in your church, when you look at your first responders, standing in the gap does not mean having the answers. Because so many times I think when people are going through tragedies, one of the questions I hear all the time, why? I mean, I've had wives, I've had mothers, scream at me and want to know one question, why? The majority of the time, I can't tell them why.
Right.
I might can tell them when something happened. I might can tell them how something happened. But very rarely can I tell them why something happened. But what I can do, and what oftentimes, whether it's your pastor at church, we stand with you, sometimes in silence, just to know there's someone there shoulder to shoulder. So it may be your pastor can say, I don't know the why, but we can pray. The person else in your church can say, I don't know the why, but let me help you with this.
Mm-hmm.
For me as a law enforcement professional is I don't know the why, but you know what? Here's my business card and my phone number.
Mm-hmm.
You call or you text me
Mm-hmm.
when we're walking through this together, when
Mm-hmm.
we're walking through the tragedy that you are experiencing that has brought me as
Mm-hmm.
a law enforcement officer into your life.
That's right.
Oftentimes I'm thrusted
Mm-hmm.
into their lives, right? And so it's caused me to rely heavily on relationships. People ask me sometimes what is the most challenging case that I've ever worked in my career.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell them that every case I've ever worked is challenging. But I can't answer that question.
Mm-hmm.
But what I can tell you is the case that I'm the most proudest of.
Okay.
And so, without going into a lot of detail, but I worked a case of a young 17-year-old girl who was physically and emotionally abused by her adopted father from the time she was 10 years old.
Mm.
And the abuse got worse and worse and worse to the point where, again, there was substantial physical abuse to where she was locked in her bedroom for days at a time, not allowed to go to school, not allowed to do a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
She was finally allowed to go back to school. It was in her senior year of high school, and she had a 12-year-old younger sister. And she knew that when she graduated and could get out from the house, the horrible abuse that she was being subjected to was going
To fall on the sister.
fall on the younger sister. And she finally got the courage to speak up.
Mm.
And she told me one day, and she spoke up. I interviewed her for hours. We talked, and I finally asked her after her adopted father was convicted, sent to a lot of years in prison, as he should be. My opinion, he didn't get enough time. But anyway, I asked her, what made the difference with you? And she said, finally, you were the first person that ever just sat there and listened to me. Didn't say anything, didn't try to tell me this or that or the other. You sat there and you listened and you let me talk.
Mm.
And so I think sometimes with people dealing with grief and dealing with tragedy, while they go why and they want the answers, what they really desire is presence. Is someone just there letting them grieve, letting them vent, letting them experience that wide range of emotions, but know if I need you, you're right there.
Mm-hmm. And the other part that he's not saying in this, that storyline of exchange, and I have realized this in the grieving side, is because it is intense, that not all your friends can handle your grief.
No, they can't.
And they can't sit with you in silence in it.
No.
There is this discomfort in grief. And we are creatures of comfort. We want comfort. We want luxury. Okay. We don't want to just live. We want to live well. For those in America, we do. And so when we can, and nothing about grief is comfort. There's no comfort there. You're exposed. You're acting out. There's rage, there's anger, and there's a book. I can't think of the name, but it was where a mother lost a son. But there was a line in there, and she said, she had to lay her why to the cross. I mean, she had to nail her why to the cross. Now, even if Tommy believes that, not everyone can receive that truth in tragedy, that, hey, folks, like, you have a why, like, you've got to nail that to the cross now. Okay, that's not going to hit folks. That's where the preaching part of us, or even the scriptures, we have to really read the room. We cannot just preach at people when we've learned these scriptures that we think bring comfort, and use those as our script, and realize that person really isn't listening at all. Can't even take in what
I don't
you're
think people in moments of tragedy and going through their grief, I don't think they're listening.
No.
Because I think they have so many things they're hearing,
Yes.
right? So one thing is drowning out the other. That's why I think a lot of times it's just so important to be a physical presence, to be a praying presence, right? Because I think people have to process those emotions so that they're able to hear, because you can't hear when you've got things saying, what happens now? What am I going to do now? How did this happen to me? Why did this happen to me? You know, God, why this? Why that? I mean, then there are sometimes, depending on the situation, because we're human, we're looking where to cast blame.
Yep.
You know, sometimes they cast it at God. Sometimes
Yep.
they cast it at family members. Sometimes they cast the blame at society. And and I think that's
That's
okay.
okay.
It's
That's
okay.
okay.
I think God understands that. I think we
Absolutely.
as a society don't understand that, but I think God understands that. I think that's what's important. So I think people sometimes don't want to hear that. Not they don't want to. I just think they're not capable. They can't
Yes.
hear some of those things,
Right.
and that's
In the
why
beginning.
that presence in the beginning.
Yes.
That's right. That's why that presence there. But that's why also God talks about the still small
That's it.
voice,
That's it.
because sometimes the still small voice is the loudest sound they'll hear.
That's it.
And they'll hear that when in the commotion of dealing with grief and anger and
Yes.
everything else, when they finally get a moment to lay their head on a pillow, or they finally get in a moment to maybe walk out into their backyard by themselves to collect their emotions and thoughts, that's when they hear that still small voice. And that, my prayer is that that still small voice will become the loudest sound they ever will hear in their life.
And I can attest to it. And I would say it took a year and a half to silence the noise. It took time. And then,
and it's okay.
But the thing of it is, folks, decisions can't wait a year and a half a
No.
lot of times. And so then now you don't have your spouse to make these decisions. You have a lot of opinions. You're still grieving. And that's not what this conversation's about. But I think Tommy eloquently is bringing up that another coin phrase I love to say, and you're going to hear this a lot, that your witness is your witness. When you can sit with someone,
that's right,
and allow them to process and just go in and say, I'm not the fixer. I'm a recovering fixer. That's what I am. I'm a recovering fixer. And there's part of our DNA to get in there, handle business, and move on. Well, grief isn't really that quick, y'all. So we can't just go in there, sweep the floor, and think, well, they should feel happy now. That's not what's happening, because our heart floors are just starting to become open and realizing there's a lot of stuff in there. And depending on your family history, that the loss could be a compound loss where all of a sudden the tragedy rips open your childhood, rips open all these things. And so that anger, that blame is pulling back a curtain that you had somehow been able to manage, and now you can't manage it. And a lot of us are guilty of that post COVID, that there were just some things that were managing our anxiety, whatever word you want to put in there, below the surface. And then COVID happened, and our capacity to manage has declined. And I'm speaking to myself here, someone who never had a panic attack, and then to feel panicked more times in the last 9 years. I had never felt panic before until the last 9 years in situations. So there is a level of overwhelm. And so, but thank you, Tommy, for your choice to
so there is a level there is a level of panic. There is a level of being overwhelmed, right? But peace flows like a river.
Yeah.
And so again, you just it's dealing with those emotions is fine. But there is a calmness there. There is a peace there. And when you finally, while you feel like you're overwhelmed by those emotions, when you finally, I think, when you finally get to the period of the peace, when it says peace flows like a river, when you get to that point, you're going to be saturated with God's peace.
Yep.
I think that's the position that you're at now, Micah, in your walk through grief, right? And your walk is that you are saturated with God's peace. You've walked those things out. You've experienced those things. I think that's what's led you to doing what you're doing
Mhm.
with the widow walk, right? I mean, I think that is all of an outpouring of that saturation of peace and comfort and just having some level of understanding about what's going on.
And I appreciate that. It is more, you can't put it into one thing. It's see a need, meet a need, not seeing that exist
No.
exactly, and we're still evolving and what the need is exactly.
So here's for me as a law enforcement professional, the big picture for me.
Okay.
Here's what I've taken away from 27 years,
Mm.
almost 27 years of highs, of lows, of seeing people at their best and seeing people at their worst. Here's what I've learned. And this is, get ready. This is not earth shattering, okay? Life is fragile. We don't know. We're sitting here, on a Thursday afternoon.
Yep.
We don't know what the next 30
Yeah.
seconds, 1 minute,
You're right.
1 hour, 1 day, 1 year
Yep.
is going to bring us, right? We
Yep.
don't know. Life is fragile.
Yep.
So for me, it's really instilled a sense of humility
Mm.
when you look at the big picture of grief and of tragedy and of sorrow and just how quickly things can change and how big the world is. We think about, Franklin, Southampton, Isle of Wight County, our surroundings, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is a big, big world.
Yep.
And our part of it is just one
Minute.
small
Mm-hmm.
speck.
Yep.
And so to me, it's just like humility. It's like value relationships,
Yep.
value friendships,
Mm-hmm.
value time,
Yep.
be present
Mm-hmm.
in the presence,
Yep.
right? Having
Mm-hmm.
understanding that things can go wrong, but things will always get better. It's just to me, humility is the thing.
I mean, these are the words of wisdom. This is what we're living out, and so for me, when tragedies strike, I see it more of a human experience now. I'm not trying to label the blame or, oh, well, this is why. We know all the whys. No, we don't know all the whys. And we probably don't need to know all the whys. And I am living that way, Tommy, in this way. And I said it last night in our life group, even. I said, if you knew you only had 5 years left, how would you live them? That's how I'm living now. I can't assume I'm going to get it. I'm hopeful that I will be alive while my children are under my roof. But beyond that, I don't know, Tommy.
None of
And
us do.
I don't feel assured in that way like I used to. And I'm thankful for those who got those 55 years with each other. I'm thankful that we have more of those stories than not. But it does seem that there's been a lot of tragedy, and the scripture talks about it. So we, the body of Christ, have an opportunity to shine light and to be girded with the armor of the Lord, all the different parts of that. We've got, I got off the bench in 2017. I didn't know I was on the bench, but let's just say we got active in 2017. Some of us were definitely active before me in the recruitment of whatever service you want to call it. But it was real for us because we were faced with, let's say, a crisis of faith or a challenge of faith, not crisis, but it was a crisis, and our faith was being challenged, and we chose, I believe, the right decision and all, because it wasn't really about the outcome. Okay,
No, it wasn't.
it wasn't about the outcome, folks. So yes, was there disappointment? There was disappointment, but I, going in, knew that we were going to do our best, and then we were going to release it to the Lord to do the rest. We were going to do that, and that was my prayer even with Derek. Lord, whatever is best for him. If it's best for him to be healed on this side, then heal him. If it's best for him to to enter into eternity when we knew there'd been years of suffering with physical ailments, then release them. And so I see mercy in death, Tommy. I see mercy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not calling people back in the same attitude that I may have. But I said, man, daggone it, I must have loved him enough to try to bring the man back.
Mm-hmm.
I loved him harder than any of y'all believe, maybe, in a sense. How deeply do you love? If you love someone so deep that you would challenge a community to fight for a resurrection, that's deep love. I didn't know I had it. Those are the fascinating parts of humanity that you surprise yourself. And that love and fighting for that has changed my life. So love wins. And when you see someone that is in a badge, can you just give them a thank you, pay for their lunch, honor those who are seeing some of the homicides in this community, are protecting our families. Yes, we do that in prayer. But if we had no police officers here and we just prayed, I think it would be a different storyline here. It's both and, y'all. It's not either or. And so I honor the
Thank you.
care that you have done. Thank you. This is coming out. We didn't even say this, but this is coming out on his birthday. And I'm so happy that I got him in time to do that, which wasn't really the intent.
No,
but when
because
we
I was trying to get out of this interview. I've got an appointment to go to this afternoon. And so I was like, Micah, can we reschedule? No, we need to do it today.
We're locking
so,
it down.
Good. We did
and
good.
so
we
we're releasing this on Memorial Day. If you see Tommy around, just share this video. Watch, comment below.
Please.
This man has good things to say. He has God things to say. And look, he helped raise me. So if you think I'm doing anything right, give Tommy some credit. Shelly Futrell may not be happy about that, but he taught me in second grade, so I learned something.
You did?
I don't know. I'm asking you. Okay, folks. It's been an hour. We are going to let you go and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.